Everyone, our esteemed participants and audience. Welcome to the second day to the Palestine Digital Activism Forum. Today is the second and the last day of the forum. We're happy to have you all here. If you may me first to stand a minute of silence for the souls of the martyrs and the victims of the war on Gaza, please. Okay. Thank you so much again. Thank you for joining, and thank you for our distinguished speakers today. Thank you for joining this session on how commercialism affecting through the artificial intelligence, sorry, on gender. Uh, Basically, in times of emergency and war, and the workshop today is trying to highlight how artificial intelligence impact gender in various ways, and of course infringe also human rights. In the beginning, before I also again welcome our speakers, if you may me give some brief and highlights of the Palestinian context and the latest actually situation due to the Israeli occupation escalation, and how they are employing the artificial intelligence and really infringing and violating the right of Palestinian people in general, but mainly human rights activists and actually journalists and media professionals. Maybe what is happening in Gaza is a big evidence of these massive violations to digital rights of people and Palestinian people in particular. I would also like to give some examples. For example, maybe they're not up to media, or not everyone has been able to hear or to see how the Israeli occupation is actually employing the digital space for their military purposes. For example, in Hebron Governorate uh, to the south of the West Bank, there is a two mostly plugged areas called H1, H2 in Hebron Governorate, where around 300,000 people are living in this area. Since last October, the Israeli occupation has actually installed a lot of technology tools and cameras and actually electronic doors to control the people there, and has this has resulted in extreme violations to right to privacy, and mainly actually against women, because if they have to go through these electronic doors, they are surrounded with hundreds, tens and hundreds of cameras, and they are subject to actually inspection using technology tool that really infringe their right to privacy and safety as well. Aside from this, also maybe we all have heard about the almost the 145 journalists, male and female, who were killed um, due to their hard work covering the massacres that is happening in Gaza, and in addition to the actually the attack on their personal social media pages by the extremists and actually the Israeli occupation forces, the Zionist movement, all which has resulted in really subjecting them to a big threat, physical and actually, to their right to life. Globally, actually, the impact of artificial intelligence is really expanding, unfortunately, and as usual, the most impacted by this is the women. And technology facilitated gender-based violence actually has been taking several forms, including but not limited to a punish sexual information, the usage of photos and images and personal information against women, the doxing, the cyberbullying, the online gender and sexual harassment. And we've been actually documenting a lot of cases where women has been really subject to serious violations in the digital space. I'm not going to take the place of our two distinguished speakers, and I'm sure that they have rich content and rich information to share with us today. So allow me to welcome again and introduce our speakers. We will start first with Hija Cameron. She is a human rights activist in the field of digital rights. She's been working for more than 10 years in the area and in human rights in general, but digital rights in particular in developing countries or like third world countries, I would say. Ija is a digital advocate. So I will leave the floor for her. We will first listen to our speakers. Each speaker will have 10 minutes to introduce the paper. And once we finish with the speakers, we will leave the floor for our esteemed participant for clarification questions or any notes. Hija, the floor is yours, and please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Um, I'm very pleased and honored to be here. I was listening to the conversations from day one at the PDF, and I was really sort of um, pleasantly surprised at the amount of information that everybody was bringing, and I was picking up some talking points from the conversation that I was attending yesterday. One such point that I want to start my intervention today is that AI, somebody said in one of the sessions yesterday that AI is inherently biased. And they talked about how it routinely sees people using a data set that somebody's biases have been involved in. The conversation was particularly was specifically about just sort of dehumanization of Palestinians through generative AI. And one speaker specifically said that data sets that are used to train AI, they exhibit some sort of bias. They exhibit some sort of human bias, particularly of people who are training or who are selecting these data sets and are training the modules, the AI models as well. One example that they gave of this bias was a report a report that was done on Flickr to find out how Flickr reacts to certain search results or gives search results. They shared an example of how most of the photos that Flickr has, the photo sharing app Flickr, it has it around Africa, the continent of Africa. They are uploaded by tourists and not the local people. What this does is when somebody searches a term or anything related to Africa on Flickr, it shows the continent from the eyes of tourists rather than from the eyes of how local people or the residents or the citizens of the continent experience or what the realities of the continent are. Now, how is this relevant to the context that we are discussing today? I started with AI is inherently biased, and it is biased towards marginalized communities. But then this bias, we see that it amplifies when two marginalized identities intersect. One could be, for example, marginalization. For example, if I talk from the context of South Asia, um, in India, Muslims are particularly oppressed. In Pakistan, where I am from, Hindus are particularly oppressed. Christians are oppressed. Ahmadi Muslims are oppressed. But then when it comes to these oppressed identities and it combines with other oppressed identity of gender, for example, the oppression becomes, it doesn't change in any context. In any context of reducing or the oppression just would focus on one particular identity, the oppressed identity, it would focus on both the identities. On gender IT, a couple of years ago, one writer wrote about these two identities, the identity of them being a Shia Muslim and the identity of being a woman in Pakistan. They intersect, and how the violence that they experience in the country, it is exacerbated. Now, when these are the realities and the violence that these people, the marginalized communities, they experience, gendered oppression also sort of is exacerbated or multiplied in this context. When you carry, and like I said, there have been multiple instances of violence intersecting with two identities, and generally there was another example that I'm reminded of right now from yesterday's one of yesterday's sessions of how within AI data sets, if somebody in a generative AI tool, somebody mentions Palestine or Palestinian streets, it would more likely or more often than not, more likely or not, it would show devastation. It would show bombed buildings, or it would show something along the lines of the destruction that we are witnessing, but would not show the fight that Palestinian people have been forced into for freedom from occupation, for freedom from colonialism since more than 75 years. It wouldn't show the joy. It wouldn't show the identities of people beyond their oppression. And that is primarily because of the data sets that the generative AI or AI has been trained on. Now, the reason why I'm sharing these examples or sharing these anecdotes from elsewhere is to sort of set the tone of how generative or how commercialization of AI is going to impact gender when multiple identities are going to intersect in this context. How does this apply in the gendered context with the commercialization of AI? We see how deepfakes target women and gendered bodies more than men. One publication I was reading yesterday by Women in International Society, it says that various research studies that they examined for this publication of theirs, they found that online gender-based violence is experienced. Deepfakes make up between 65 and 90% of the cases of online gender-based violence that women face. Now, this report refers to gender-based or deepfakes as revenge porn, but I do have reservations from the term revenge porn itself, so I refer to it as image-based sexual violence, or for this context, we would also refer to deepfakes, where AI is being used to morph images, morph people's faces onto images that are not real. Now, this commercialization is commercialization of violence in the context of image-based sexual violence. The impact of this kind is personal as well as professional. Victims have reported, and I was reading one report which referred to BBC's segment some years ago that mentioned two Zimbabwean women who reported, who shared their story of being subjected or being targeted with deepfake, and their images were morphed on unreal images or explicit images elsewhere. And when they found out, there were repercussions for both of these women, personally and professionally. One woman reported that she was socially isolated. The family disowned her, and while the other one reported that she was fired from her employment, from her work. These are real impacts of violence. Another example that I have of how image-based, sort of deepfake or AI or commercialization of AI has been affecting women is from India, where a very prominent journalist, Rana Ayub, she was targeted with deepfake videos because she was reporting on a case particularly she was reporting on a case that referred to an 8-year-old girl being subjected to sexual violence multiple times and then was murdered. There was specific targeted attacks on her to the point that she's still being targeted. And in some of the interviews later, she reported that she shared that even now, despite the violence, despite the voice that she has, despite the platform that she has, she still thinks twice before sharing anything online, before voicing her opinions online, because she fears that she's going to be targeted by some form of violence again. The commercialization of AI in its initial stages also led to tech companies to work on its own advancement, to the point that now all these tools need a few photos of a person from a certain, or in some cases just one angle, to generate a persona of someone and then show them in any condition by typing the prompt. For example, in ChatGPT, a lot of articles, because I'm an editor, and so a lot of articles that I receive, they do have some certain aspect of generative AI or text from ChatGPT, because people have written prompts, people have given prompts to this tool, and then it reverts with information that it has been trained on. Similarly, there are tools that let people create images and videos, and then the implications of these tools and videos are sort of negative on gender, but I'm not I'm not very keen on I'm not convinced that AI is the problem. It is also the problem with how it is trained, one, and how it generates content, or how it generates based on the prompts that it has been given. But we cannot sort of I'm trying to think of an English word for this. I'm thinking in Urdu right now. There is no sort of any. Okay, I mean, just sort of, it is important to mention that this is not a flaw of technology. It is a flaw of technology, rather a failure of society that we're part of, because those who are training these AI models are people who are part of the same society, and they replicate their own understanding or mindset of the situation into their work of training these models. As a result, we have highly sexist and straight up discriminatory new technology in the hands of anyone with an internet connection and a smartphone that the laws are not adapted to control as yet, because the legal framework does not catch up to the speed of development of these tech tools. I want to check the time first before I move forward. So Kenna?
Yes, you have 2 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. I'll be very quick to wrap up. Just to quickly wrap up my comment, I would just say that we do have a part to play as just dedicated folks. What we produce does have an impact on what AI picks up as certain truth when responding to the prompts. One example that I can share to illustrate this is that at Gender IT and also at Association for Progressive Communications, which Gender IT is the project of, we do not show women in distress in our imagery when we talk about online gender-based violence, which is a major chunk of our work. This is primarily because it prompts a certain narrative of women being helpless when they experience online gender-based violence, and B, these images and artworks are consistently being used to train AI models, and we do not want to participate in that narrative. There are multiple news reports that talk about how AI has been trained, how AI is being trained on people's unpublished work because they shared it on for example, the most famous tool, ChatGPT, for editing. And then it trained itself on that. And similarly, the same tools are picking up information from the internet. These data sets are being fed from the internet. So they have the ability to be trained, because and this is why we make sure that we're not promoting a certain narrative that we're trying to walk away from, which is women in distress, helpless women, people when subjected to violence, they don't have anything they don't have any help to go towards, or they're helpless. They're at the mercy of other people or other, other mechanisms. But then it's not just us. We work with various artists who are playing with the same AI tools to generate alternate realities, the kind that humanizes marginalized communities. One artist shows Palestinian liberation, for example, with women celebrating, children dancing in the streets, and men cherishing freedom. This is an alternate and a possible reality that AI should be showing when somebody writes Palestine or when somebody writes Palestinian streets. It should be one of the realities. It should be one of the suggestions that is coming from AI. This is the start of what other applications are possible, but it is also a reality that mainstream applications so far have not been kind, especially with the increase in its application militarization and promoting certain harmful narratives targeting communities or groups of people. I'll stop there because from this onwards, I'm sure Nadine would have geography-specific responses or comments to share. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to take questions whenever.
Thank you, Hijam. Maybe now we'll move to Nadine. Nadine is a feminist activist working at the intersection of tech, labor, and social movement. And she's a researcher in the field of artificial intelligence. Nadine, please go ahead. The floor is yours, and you'll have also 10 minutes to present your paper.
Thank you. شكرا كتير سكينة. Thank you very much. Also Iman and Brahim, everyone. It's a wonderful honor to be here with you today. And what a privilege to listen to this fantastic forum. We have learned so much and discussed so much so far. I will share my screen. Can you confirm, Sukaina, that you can see it?
Yes.
Excellent. And I will time 10 minutes.
Okay.
So I want to go back to what Sam Gregory said on the very first opening session of the forum. He said, it's not very useful to think about AI with panic and doom. And yet I think if you ask any Arab person in any Arab city, what comes to their mind when they think of AI, I think it is only terror and horror. Difficult for us to celebrate this advancement in human creativity and science when it has been deployed in such horrific ways over the past 8 months. I will talk from a feminist perspective that is mostly concerned with power, the question of power, who owns it, who delegates it, and in whose service this is done. So I will speak a bit about gender, but a bit less so. And also as a feminist who tries to adopt intersectionality, I understand intersectionality not so much to mean that all the oppressions are connected, although of course they are, but also to mean that we are all implicated in these systems of economic, political oppressions, social oppressions. We're all tied to them as users of platforms, but also objectors to these platforms. Dr. Timnit talked yesterday also about Congo, about Ethiopia, about Sudan, about other places. This is a photo from a cobalt mine in Congo, which, as you have followed, is causing so much death and destruction to the people and the communities. And yet I am using a computer that has this cobalt in order to speak to you. The same kind of warta, or kind of the way we're tied into these systems. This is a photo from Foxconn in China, the factory that makes the iPhone that I use also to talk to you and to follow the news. These are anti-suicide nets, because the workers attempt so many times to commit suicide that they've put up nets. That's how terrible their working conditions are. And so in the name of advancement of tech that we use in our everyday lives because we're so disconnected from the source and so ignorant to the way that technology is developing. على حساب مين؟ يعني who is paying the price for me to be able to use this tech? A big challenge we have now with AI is just the speed at which it's developing. So I've put here, just to illustrate, the first personal computer came into use in 1981. So it's my age. That's only 42, 43 years that we had the first personal computer. The first smartphone only came out in 2007. And think of now, less than 20 years later, how common its usage has become, how we depend on it. Here I've put a timeline of the first kind of algorithm, the invention of a sorting order in 2009 that started to change how we interact with the internet and web services and how it impacted our own communication. We arrive at the massacre and genocide committed by the Israelis with claims that they have been using artificial intelligence, claims to say that our military prowess is so advanced. With lack of any sort of global regulation around AI, you see here this Vienna conference only happened in April of 2024, and the conference urges the regulation of AI weapons. The surreality of dealing with this, the absurdity of now thinking we have to regulate AI weapons as they are being used, or at least as the Israelis brag that they, because of course, as Alex talked yesterday, Israel could have committed this genocide with or without AI. It's not so much the AI, but that Israel tries to sell these sorts of advanced military intelligence. What they're actually selling is nothing related to technological intelligence. It's related to the crimes of surveillance that they commit against the Palestinians. Yani what sort of technological advancement kills over 10,000 women in 7 months? What technological advancement raises an entire area to the ground? What is so advanced about this technology that it commits such blatant murder? And even if there was regulation, do we actually think the Israelis would follow any kind of international law, any kind of human framework? Of course not. What they are selling is surveillance technology. And this is how I urge people to always think of, when they think of AI, to think immediately of surveillance. Because the way they are able to gather this data, because they have made Palestinians the most surveyed people in the world, they are able to sell, export to other countries. We will arrive at some of these countries. The technology that surveys people and does recognition and identifies, steals their data, hacks into their WhatsApp. It's important to distinguish that this is not technological prowess per se, but this is a complete violation of human beings' right to privacy that they use, but they call it AI. The Emirates, of course, is very heavily invested in. Now they've released a month ago this AI blueprint. They're dubbing Dubai as Dub AI. Saudi Arabia is also investing. They want to build server farms and data centers. This is a photo of a data center from Facebook, because it's hard for our human brains to capture just the size of a data center. When we think of big data, it's difficult for us to understand just how big the entire internet is. Yani we hear claims that ChatGPT was trained on the entire public internet, but it's hard for us to understand. So I like to show photos. This is one of 1,400 data centers. The rate at which they build these centers to hold all of this data. And when we think of power and big data, we have to ask a number of questions. Our friends at Midan talked a bit about the tagging of data, who chooses how data is tagged, and this relates also to gender, but also the question of who can store the data. How much electricity, water, what's the environmental impact of storing all of this data, and why? For which purpose, for whose benefit? Then we have to ask ourselves who can read this big data. Because if I send you to your normal laptop that you're using right now an Excel file that is 5 gigabytes, for example, it's probably your laptop cannot run it. So think of an Excel file that is a gazillion terabytes. What sort of processing power? And when we think processing power, it's environment, water, and energy. This is why Sam Altman has asked for $7 trillion to increase the processing power in his strange quest to AGI. My bet is that Saudi Arabia will give him his $7 trillion. But I want to go back to the familiar kind of framing of AI for good, because it comes from a long history that started in Oxford and Cambridge in the late 90s. You might remember, called ICT 4D. The concept behind ICT 4D is that if we give laptops first and then iPads to poor populations in developing countries in the global south, this is what they need for empowerment. They'll be able to educate themselves, get out of poverty, etc. Although since ICT 4D started until now, the gap between the wealthiest and the poorest has grown larger and larger. The numbers around violence are bigger and bigger. Clearly, this is the white gaze, الرجل الأبيض kind of dream that thinks that it brings us the technology, which now they do with the platforms. Here's the technology so you can express yourselves, tell your stories, but there's always conditionalities on how you express yourselves. This is reflected in their algorithm and in their content moderation, but I feel like their dream, their original vision is a certain expression of Arab or Muslim or Pakistani, or they don't like expressions that don't fit within this particular gaze. So they go through to a lot of trouble to fit within it. I give here an example of Meta Mates for Ceasefire. Some folks at Meta, about 200 people, signed this sort of petition. And what they explain in it is fascinating because it's a form of alienation that they have from their work. They said that inside Meta, in their internal Facebook, because they have their own internal Facebook, they are not allowed to speak about certain topics, including Gaza and Palestine, which makes one think of sort of a Marxist alienation framing of this. The workers who are building the freedom of expression platforms are not allowed themselves any freedom of expression. And that's the dilemma that we are in, الورطة that we have with all of these platforms. This is a photo of the phone line cables from 1914. I like it because it's sort of the same thing how the internet is built. Cables that connect me to you across different countries and continents. And the jubilation we feel when we meet each other and talk to each other, or maybe like or tweet or see content from each other, is because of these protocols that we can talk to each other. Originally, the internet was built on open protocols that anyone can build a browser and we visit the same website. Anyone can open an email and we send emails to each other. And these decisions made from the old people of the internet that then became privatized bit by bit since 2009, that created this whole gig economy to fight piracy, to control what is sent, what goes and comes via these different cables. And as I was researching the gig economy, I began to see that 500 million workers in the world work in the gig economy, mostly to do validation of data training content for these different NLPs that we see now. There's a lot of funny stories about claims made by AI companies that this is AI, but it's actually 5,000 humans sitting somewhere being paid a few cents per verification of an image. As the Uber driver is driving the Uber, they too are contributing to the automation of these jobs. And I want to look a bit about how this happened. How did we get to this point where our data became the main commodity of trade on the internet? And why is it that they want more and more of it? So when the dot-com bubble burst in the year 2000, because of the overvaluation of companies, afterwards all the companies had to figure out a new way to make money. And the new way they found was data mining. So all the content they keep asking for us, Elon Musk has said openly that hate speech on Twitter is 6 times more engagement. He has said it himself. He wants more hate speech. He wants more mockery. He wants more division because it is 6 times more content, more money that they can make. They take the surplus of this data and they feed it into machine learning, creating this new economic system that some scholars have called surveillance capitalism. رأسمالية رقيبة, an economic system that is based on the extraction of our data. Here we can talk a bit about deepfakes, maybe هلا in the Q&A. I've put this map because I love it. I encourage someone to put it in the chat. It's called Anatomy of an AI. It's a wonderful poster because it shows you when we talk about AI, there are economic, hardware, water. Yeah, you don't think of water when you think of AI, for example, but this chart kind of shows you the how economic of a question this AI is. And I have put finally this photo you might remember from 2011 to say that when we joined Facebook and Twitter, we used to come to forums like these and hold workshops to get people to join Facebook and Twitter. It wasn't that these platforms were super intuitive, because now people criticize maybe decentralized networks like Mastodon or other networks to say, no, they're too difficult, we cannot use them. It was the same for these companies before, but we made a big effort because there is much less meaning for individual engagement with big tech when it is not all of us with a concerted effort trying to engage. And I will end with this photo because I always love to remind people that technology is a product of creativity, not just of math. The math can be on our side. Creativity, definitely we have a lot of it. In thinking about what we do, how we resist these different models, let us remember it's not only the techies, the people with PhDs, the engineers, the people who live in the West, but indeed all of us that must be concerned, all of our movements concerned with technology in addition to everything that we are working on.
Thank you, Nadine.
Thank you, Nadine.
Thank you, Hija and Nadine, for the amazing paper, for the insightful paper, actually, that took us much beyond actually artificial intelligence. Hija has highlighted the fact that the problem is with the not with the artificial intelligence, is how we employ these artificial intelligence into oppressions, onto, like, discrimination, into as a tool to shrink spaces for any civic participation. Nadine also has made a very clear and actually great connection between AI and servience, which I totally believe that this is, at the end of the day, the story. It's all about, like, power and power, like, shift, and how AI is being again employed for purposes that much beyond gender biased or gender violation. We have almost 15 minutes left. Dear distinguished participant and audience, please, if any has any question, any clarifications, any comment that you'd like to share with our speakers, please feel free either to leave it in the chat box, or maybe you can raise your hand, and we'll leave the floor for all of you for any input. Okay, so maybe if you may me, I will read very quickly the comment that been left in the chat box by some of our participants. Lena has said or wrote that the argument that the AI models that we are using for free or not are biased is compelling. I'm curious to hear more about if we should aim to address that bias by working with the technologists who are building the models so that they can adjust that. If so, how? If not, it seems impossible to prevent people from experiencing this bias as the AI models continue to gain popularity. Our colleague Abdullah has also left a message in the chat box, huggingface.com space via Libre Idea. The Hugging Face Space Idea by Fondation via Libre مش متأكدة إذا قرأت صح. I'm not sure if I read it correct. Is a project aimed at detecting and inspecting biases in natural language processing and LAP system, particularly in word embeddings and language models. Kimberly has responded to Lena but also left a comment. It's widely known that frontiers models contain inherent biases and those companies are addressing it. Apparently, the motivation is as much for monetary reasons as ethical ones. That said, continual vigilance by responsible AI advocacy groups continues. Kimberly said again, also Pegasus tech out of Israel that enables an agency or company to target and hack into a cell phone without a user's awareness was bought and used by FBI in the States until it was discovered by journalists and exposed. Leaning again has the power of generative AI as a tutor like the Khan Academy GPT could be transformative in reaching women and girls across societies where they otherwise may find limited educational opportunities. Would we encourage that if it's related to school curriculum and academic advancement? Or is the bias there too dangerous in your view? Or the economic extractive model something you propose we boycott? Eric Smith's anatomy of .ai, I think, is image Nads shared. Abdullah again, how can the commercialization of AI be leveraged to address and reduce gender biases? And what specific measures should be implemented to ensure that women led AI startups receive equitable access to funding and resources? So maybe I'll leave again the floor for our speakers, Hija and Nadine, if you want to clarify, comment back on the comments and notes our colleagues left in the chat box. Hija, maybe you want to go first? Yes.
Yeah, and I quickly respond to Lena's comments, and I'll respond to both of the comments actually in one response.
Okay, sorry, Hija, but please in 2 minutes because we have only.
Yes, very quickly. As I said earlier, AI is not inherently negative, but it definitely is biased. What this means is that different biases will appear in different tools and applications that AI will be used in. The problem is not what it is intended to do, rather how it is responding to questions and prompts that are fed into them. I'll give you an example. When I was preparing, very recently, I was preparing for my driver's license, and I wanted to prepare for the writing test of the driver's license. What I did was I trained a bot on ChatGPT only. I trained a bot to act as the instructor and ask me questions related to the booklet that I've trained it on. Now I fed that information to it, and I prompted it to ask me questions, and it asked me questions, and then it consistently sort of test me. It was consistently testing me based on the knowledge that I have and the knowledge that I've given the bot to. Now the same tool that I used for something like this, which is a practical application of AI in my case, it is also used to advance discriminatory narratives, like, for example, feed it or ask it a question related to Israel's right to defense, it would say it would give a certain narrative. Similarly, it would ask it about Palestine's liberation, it would give a certain narrative, which people have tested that it is discriminatory. Now it's the same tool that I made this bot on is also used for discriminatory information. So I think it is also the applications in terms of how we're using the tool rather than whether it is AI's problem or the technology's problem. Technology is not the problem. Technology is made by humans that have been propagating or promoting the same narrative for years, and now those narratives are being implemented or mirrored or reflected in the technology that they are part of developing. I do not think that this is dangerous. It's just a matter of there's also a matter of media literacy that we talk about, or just generally information that people have, or the awareness about context that people have. So it is also very important. In the context of online gender-based violence, in the context of how commercialization of AI is being used to target or promote online gender-based violence, I do think that it is also a matter, or it is also a problem of the societies that we live in. We continue to build technology without actually addressing the underlying problems that we've not yet addressed. Laws are not adapt to address these issues when they translate online, because they're also not doing very good job when these issues are, when they confront these issues in the offline spaces. So these are essentially going to be replicated, and you will see them doing exactly this. The entire structure is going to fail if we are not going to address the underlying issues that come from society rather than from technology.
So, Hija, I'll leave now the floor for Nadine in case she has any comments.
Yes. Quickly also, the question about the teachers and using Khan Academy's GPT. I think in general to take a stand against some of this tech might be counterproductive because the deployment of these models is happening so fast. In a lot of cases, it's happening غصب عنا. يعني you see Google search has implemented, you see Instagram has changed the search bar, you try to write a Google Doc and there's 10 pop-ups asking if you want help. So there's also rapid deployment. ChatGPT, their website used to look like a research kind of institute. Now it just is trying to sell you these AI agents. So I don't know about saying no to them. I would use this as an opportunity to work with the teachers to explain how this AI is working. Use the technology as an opportunity for getting the community together to decide this is what we want to use it for, this is how we not want to use it. And maybe at a wider level with teachers' unions as well to put out their own policies. There's a lot of power we have as users that we've kind of سلمناه to the companies. We've kind of given up because there's this trade-off between the ease of these tools and how much of a violation it does to our, in this case, labor. But in generally, to say not to use the AI tools at this point, I don't know. Although we are in what they call an AI winter, which chills my heart that we are in a slower kind of pace. I think the energy problem with these models is a good problem. At least now we can catch up, but it is our task to get all of these movements, organizations, unions, especially environmentalists, up to speed with how AI is developing so we can make decisions about it. I want to put a resource here that I absolutely love by Juliana in sort of a Latin American perspective to answer Abdullah's question on women building AI for kind of also empowerment. I think there will be a lot of startups from the region trying to do Arabic, also AI, and this will happen with or without us. I like Juliana's resource because it asks good questions about, is this tech that we actually need? Or is this a problem solvable somehow else? There's a lot, everyone now is thinking about bias. Personally, I worry that we are trying to gender mainstream a dystopia. يعني I look at Gaza, and I look at the AI discussion, and I wonder, who cares if I ask for a doctor, they gave me, يعني there's such this representation issue. I have a question mark, I haven't resolved it. Whoever has, please let me know. But this issue of, it's a representation problem. It's a big problem. You ask for Arab women, do we put hijab or no hijab? Who's asking this question? Who is invested in the answer to this question? Versus they are stealing our data in incredible ways, and we have no governments that support us. Where can we go? Companies aren't listening, governments aren't listening. We only have each other, our sheer numbers. And remember, after 7 October, this feeling of getting online. My friend Sumaya was telling me the other day, it was the first time she felt like Twitter was her Twitter. It was the original Twitter she signed up for, the people she followed that she could see. You broke the algorithm for some days and weeks. You broke all of this control over what is said and what is shared, which is also a parallel with 7 October, no? So these moments must galvanize us to want to build better ways of talking to each other and encouraging each other to migrate, to be able to choose when we use the platforms and when not, because this is the kind of power we need to exert on them for them to make real changes, in addition to all the work of holding them accountable and studying how they do it, etc.
Thank you, Nadine. There are just like two, I would say, highlights left in the chat box. I will read them very quickly, and maybe there we stop. Lena has left just like a final highlight, also because it's not clear the venues to offer input and feedback, but good endpoints raised. Then Reina Zahreddin, techno solutionism is a concerning trend that even dev and digital and the human rights organization are falling for it. And we have one last question from Kimberly. What are the best ways to follow Nadine and Hija? Please, just 1 minute each, please, because we're running behind the time. Hija, do you want to go first? Hija, you're muted if you're speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, Nadine has already mentioned we have a website called genderit.org. It's a platform of Association for Progressive Communications. Nadine has worked really works very often with us. They're the brains behind a lot of the work that we do. But apart from that, I think we're reachable. I'm reachable through my email. I'll post it in chat just so people have it. But genderit.org is one website that I think people should look out for, because we do give platform to new and emerging writers, but also a lot of experts in the field as well, field of digital rights, gender and sexuality as well.
Thank you, Hija. Nadine, any final comments?
No, thank you very much, Sukaina, for hosting us in this panel.
Thank you, Hija and Nadine. Thank you, our distinguished participant and audience. And thank you, Hamla, for organizing such amazing platform where we really felt that finally we have a safe space that where we can share our thoughts and stories. Thank you again for everyone, and I'm 100% sure that Hamla will take every note and every comment from here, and we will see the magnificent work coming soon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, and have a sweet afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.